with that, let's just bring our guy on, Mr. Joseph Gilbert. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, shoot. Not much. Getting through another week. Enjoying the off season. But like you said, I did peruse some of the comments in the last video, and yeah, man, it hurts me to see what tech people act like sometimes, because I have in my head I have an ideal of what a tech fan is. And then I get on the internet and it just disappoints me. It just
Disappointed. Yeah, and look, that's why I wanted to have you on. I mean, I'm just some dummy that never really did anything athletically on the internet. So I said, let's bring in someone that's got some hardware, that has a 2009 ACC championship ring, and most importantly, played for God himself, Paul Johnson. And I don't think Paul would disagree with that. And disclaimer, I like Paul. I think Paul was a great coach. But, and this is what I want to hear, I'm sure you listened to the entire interview. I know you listened to the video. This idea that 7 wins a year, the occasional Orange Bowl, an ACC title in a decade, and going 3-16 against your rival. Like he's Nick Saban, I guess, at Tech. To me, I want more than that. It's not what I'm seeing out of some Tech fans. What's your takeaway?
No, well, you're absolutely right. And when it comes to Paul, I can't take nothing away from him. He ran an organized program. He was a good coach. That said, I feel like Tech fans are so starved, and they have gotten so used to, and I don't want to hate on Gailey much, but the big issue with Gailey was he didn't show up in big games. It was rare that we won a big one. And to Paul's credit, occasionally he would win a big game.
Yes.
However, like the mindset of Tech fans seems to be, oh, well, hey, remember that one time we won? That's the best we can do. So we have to hold on to that. That is, there's no besmirching that memory, because that's the best that we can achieve as a program. Mm. And it just hurts me, because that's 7 wins and a trip to the Humanitarian Bowl. Tech can do better than that.
Yes.
We are capable of so much better. And
with what we have now, like, you wouldn't even, the things I was talking about administration, you wouldn't even have to change any of that. Because here's the thing. In the past 30 years, guys, let's get real. We've recruited about 60th in the country in the past 30 years, if you average it. Now, the guy next to me was part of the best class we ever signed, which was the 15th ranked overall class. And not throwing shade, 15th overall shouldn't be a historically great Georgia Tech class, like the best of all time. And I think this idea, or this way of thinking that, well, just because Bobby Dodd and Pepper Rogers and Calvin Johnson in the day, that means something today to kids you're recruiting. It doesn't mean anything to them. They don't care about that. So I did have some questions. I did want to talk about this interview, and it's something I kind of skimmed over. Paul said that they didn't take transfers, and I saw you in the comment section saying, well, he did, though. So what was that about?
Yeah. I was a little curious about that comment myself, because I mean, granted, 15 years ago now, back when I was on campus, transfers weren't nearly as common as they are now, but they happened. I remember we had Anthony Abunaway transferred in from Tulsa, was a good defensive end for us. As you mentioned, Anthony Allen transferred in from Louisville. We had, he mentioned the guy Patrick Scove coming in from Stanford, and
that was his name.
Yeah, Patrick Scove. Which I thought he was going to turn out better, but
I did too. He was built like a brick shit house, but
he was.
He just never. He
used to be fullback, and it just didn't translate to be back for whatever reason.
He seemed to have trouble kind of finding the hole and feeling things out. which I'm not saying I can't relate with. But he kind of looked at his shoelaces, it looked like, through the hole and just kind of ran into the back of an offensive lineman a little bit.
You know, and so you have that, and I'll give him that the tech graduate program was very selective, and I don't know if that's still the case, but I know a graduate transfer is something very rare because even on our own homegrown roster, I knew Daryl Richardson, who I think he graduated with his MBA. I want to say he graduated with a graduate degree, and I believe they let Roddy Jones into the graduate program, and those were major exceptions. And
Okay.
I understand a graduate transfer is difficult, but an undergrad, it's more difficult to transfer into tech than it is a UGA or an Alabama or something like that. But to say we
Literally
didn't
anywhere
have
else.
transfers, but yeah,
I mean, and I'm not
anywhere.
exaggerating. And
Yeah.
maybe you know this. I know as a student, just to set football aside, like when I transferred in, you had to have a 3.5, and that only accounted your math and science GPA. I don't know that it's that for football. It can't be that anymore. But I'm thinking in the day, I don't know if that might have been an issue getting some kids in, or if it was just
It could have been, and I know you had to. I know there were probably hoops that you had to jump through to get undergrad guys in, but yeah, the idea that we didn't have any transfers is just false. Like we were able to bring in transfers and bring in impact transfers,
yeah.
even as far back as '08. So
Now
yeah,
that's
that
the
I didn't understand
reason.
at all.
That's the reason you left for your final year, right?
Yep.
You weren't able to get accepted into a graduate program, or they didn't have a graduate program you were interested in. What was it?
Yep. Well, it was the first one. I tried to get into the tech MBA program, and they said at the time they just said there wasn't any way they could make it work. They
Mm.
required work experience, and they and I had a decent GPA. I want to say I was right around a 3, but
Which
they
would be
said
the
that.
dean's list every year at Tech, by the way. The dean's list at Tech is a 3.0.
I was very proud every semester that I made that. But yeah, so for that reason, when I graduated, I had 2 years left, and I did not want to spend it, getting a second seal on my diploma, or trying to
Right.
get an HTS degree or something that I hadn't studied for. I wanted to get something that would be useful to me moving forward. And not that those things aren't, but not for what I was planning to do after college.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and that, I'm sure that's most likely changed now too, but I just want to say it's insane. You were starting offensive guard, and I assume you wanted to stay if you tried to do all that and just couldn't because of some kind of ridiculous arbitrary requirement they had for a business program. We're not even talking about like some premier engineering program. But I wanted to ask you, you played for Paul, so I feel like you know him better than most. Um, what was
Don't want to give myself too much credit, but yeah, I know him a little bit.
he made a comment that, and I'm sure you caught it. That this offense was made for Josh Nesbitt, but he probably wouldn't admit that, which was kind of curious to me. It kind of implies that Josh didn't want to run that offense at all. Do you know whether Josh had a problem, like he would rather not have ran the triple option, or would he have come to Tech if they did and he wasn't already on roster?
To be honest, I never talked with him, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. Um, but my educated guess would be no. Like Josh came to Tech for the same reason everybody else in that '07 class came. We were sold that, well, the marketing pitch at the time was, one, they emphasized the academics, and 1 out of every 8 graduates is a millionaire and all that. But
Right.
also the big thing they emphasized was, we want guys that want to go pro. We want to help you get into the league. And that was a lot of that was the mindset of the '07 class. Like, we are here. We want to get the job. We want to get the job done, and we want to sharpen ourselves to where we have a shot at the next level, because that is what we're here to do. I'm not here to try hard. I'm not here to go out and hope. Like, this is a business, and I felt at the time these coaches can help me get from where I'm at as a high schooler to where I want to be as a potential pro in 5 years. And I don't want to say, I don't want to speak for everybody, because I surely don't speak for a class of 24, 25 guys.
Right.
But I can say the vast majority of that class would not have shown, or would not have given Tech the time of day if we were running the option. And I'll tell you that for a few reasons. One, what the triple option is to offensive linemen, especially in recruiting, that's a white flag. I am not going to try and compete for top shelf recruits. And the reason you're not going to be able to, for the most part, because the offensive line scheme, the technique that you play with under the option, is completely different from what the NFL looks at and knows how to evaluate. Because at one point I went to a former coach. It was after my second season. I went to a former coach I knew who was coaching in the NFL, and I took him my cut-up tape. And I said, hey, take a look at this. Tell me, what do you think? Like, how would this translate as an NFL recruiter looking at this and evaluating me? And he flatly told me, I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Wow.
Because, yeah, like it's completely impossible, because, everything down to the stance. Like, the triple option stance, you're told to have 60% of your weight on your hand. You're basically in a sprinter stance, which is antithetical to 90% of how offensive linemen run their scheme. So it one, doesn't prepare you technically, and two, the offense, especially as an offensive lineman, the triple option is a meat grinder. It is so hard on your knees, on your shoulders, on all your joints, because you're constantly throwing yourself on the ground and cutting legs, and you're also you're not taking 2 steps and fitting up with somebody. You're basically a rocket, and you are taking you are firing off and sprinting directly in front of you usually, and it involves a little bit of run blocking technique, but it's still 100%, or it's still 95% different from how every other offensive lineman is going to prepare. So the league, it doesn't help you get to the league as an offensive lineman.
Well, it's a hindrance, it sounds like, because from what you're saying, you'd have to basically relearn the position.
Yep. That's 100% correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I remember coming back, we had a 7-on-7 over the summer with Tech and State, my last year at State, and I came with some offensive linemen. We met with the Tech O-line and did some drills, and it was like we were doing 2 different positions. Like, you just can't translate what an option guy does versus a traditional guy. And it's really different for an offensive lineman, but it's like that for almost the entire offense, because as a running back, the NFL wants to evaluate, how does this man read blocks? How does he let the play develop in front of him? What's his acceleration like once he sees a hole?
Right.
Whereas in the option, there is no reading. The only person reading in an option offense is the quarterback. The quarterback's reading whether he's going to hand it, run it himself, or pitch it. But the B-back, he's hitting the B gap, or he's getting the A gap every play. And it doesn't matter if the hole's there or not. He doesn't have the option of taking in the big picture and seeing the hole. It's just run straight forward. So, So, guys like John Dwyer, he's the main one I always think of. You would never see that sort of running back coming to an option offense. And even though Dwyer did well, even though he had success, the type of success he could have had as a featured back in a different system, one, would have prepared him better for the league, and
Yes.
two, yeah, probably would have extended his career a little bit, because running backs, similar to linemen, are just getting beat on every play. Because
Right.
if you don't have the ball, you're running a fake, and the defensive line is told to hit you. And and it's like that on down the line.
So there's a few things like I'm hearing from that. One, a lot of times when we talk about like the triple option kind of setting us back in recruiting, we really think about the skill positions: wide receiver, quarterback, running back. And what I haven't really thought about is it might kill your recruitment of offensive linemen even more, which I didn't think about. Also, when he's talking about hitting the A gap, talking about the space between the center and the guard. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope, absolutely right.
And look, Gailey was an NFL guy. I believe he's the offensive coordinator for the Bills today. And top recruits, their number one concern is probably going to be, how does this prepare me for the NFL? When you look at the premier college football programs in the country, they're factories for the NFL and preparing talent for the NFL. And that's something Tech can be. And I think that's why you're seeing these coaches like Buster. We just lost Josh Crawford. I got to make a video on that, to Georgia. One, because his recruitment, first and foremost, they liked, but his development of talent. I want to ask you about I got a lot of comments like, you're over-analyzing this Brent Key thing. And if you think I did, that's totally fine. Please say so. But he made a comment like, Paul is fine. Like, Paul's got things going in the right direction. Buddy was there. Buddy was there and didn't say anything. And he made that small ball comment. And I had one person comment, and I think you responded to it. Small ball isn't about the size of the offensive lineman. I'm interested on your take.
No, I completely agree with you on that. The thing I noticed about Paul through he is very good at cultivating an image of himself through the media and through interviews he gives. He's very good at projecting that good old boy. Hey, I dip and I hit goal. Yeah, exactly. Very, very, very much just hey, I'm just a head ball coach trying to do what I can. And that image has worked for him, and you can't. And because of that, because he's good at cultivating that, he can't just come out and say, I don't like Brent for this, that, and the other. He has to couch it in some sort of, I've been wronged.
Yeah.
And that's what I interpreted that line as. Hey, because the way Paul marketed himself at Georgia Tech was always Paul first, Tech second, or Paul first, players second. And I mean, I noticed it when I first walked in, when the year he came in and was hired, they completely redid the Edge Center and put a brand new, beautiful mural up. And it had, Bobby Dodd and Coach Ross, just a bunch of Tech legends all scattered around. But at the top, the biggest thing that all these are leading to is Coach Paul Johnson.
When was this? What year was this?
This would have been 2008.
So this was before he did anything at Tech.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this was day one. He set himself up there, before we won a game. So that
and this is what people, I don't think, will acknowledge either. No one has probably been as critical of Georgia Tech as Paul Johnson. Paul Johnson's been ultra critical of administration, and his own AD had to tell him to knock it off, because he was rightly saying, okay, in recruiting, you look at Clemson. You look at what they have. You look at their facilities. Do we have any of that? And he was, quickly told to be quiet about it. But for all these people that think, for whatever reason, you can't be critical of anything Georgia Tech, then you've got to be critical of Paul for that. So you got to choose one or the other. You either got to be critical of Paul for being critical of Tech, or the other. Now, as far as the small ball comment, I feel like I thought it was self-evident, but in your opinion, was he talking about the size of the offensive lineman, and was that warranted for Brent to say?
Uh, I didn't when I first heard Coach Key say it, I didn't immediately interpret it uh, as a reference to the offensive line. I think it very well could have. Now that I've gone back and watched it, but what I interpreted it as originally, when I think small ball, it's a sort of football that I think of as try hard. It's hey, we are gonna we're tech, we're gonna be physical, we're gonna go out, we're gonna try real hard. It's like being an effort warrior is
Yeah.
what is a phrase we used to use for it. And I feel like that was the mentality under Paul Johnson. And while that's a fine mentality to have if you are a Boise State or a G5 trying to work your way up into the P5, if you are trying to build yourself up, but you maybe don't have the backing that you could have, that is an okay mindset to have. However, that mindset has absolutely no place at Georgia Tech. We are an institution with 4 national championships. The last one was in 1990. Like, I'm not. You don't have to go back to the 50s, Paul, to see where Georgia Tech was an elite program.
Yeah, he kind of crapped on O'Leary, didn't he?
Yeah, well, yeah, just got wrote off O'Leary. And I know Gailey doesn't get much respect. The only difference between Paul Johnson and Chan Gailey is Paul Johnson had a few wins against Georgia.
Yep.
Now, that's not small.
An ACC title and Orange Bowl victory, to be fair. But yeah, main thing was the wins over Georgia. 3 of them in 11 years, which I guess is something to be super happy about.
Yeah, like it's something. But like I just never understood why Coach Gailey was seen as so much less than, and Coach Johnson was up on a pedestal when their bowl records. I mean, Gailey actually had an edge on him in his bowl wins.
Had a way better bowl record.
Mm-hmm.
Way better. Paul was 27% in the postseason.
Jeez.
He didn't win his first bowl until year 5.
Yep. I very much remember that. And that's something else you don't talk about with the option. If you have an extended period of time to prepare for it, the option offense, its win probability falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
Because, you give somebody long enough and enough time to get their people healthy. Yeah, people can figure a way to beat it.
One teams that play you a lot, I mean, and Nico's right, ACC Coach of the Year too. Can't take that away from him. But like Todd says, Georgia and Kirby feared the option. Did they? They got a pretty good record against it. I don't know that they feared it.
I'd say the option annoyed them. Like it was pesky, but fear is a bit of a strong word.
Yeah, I mean, Paul was able to make it work on the odd year. What was it like playing under Paul? Now that the cat's out of the bag, when we first talked, I didn't really want to get into that just because this hadn't come out and it kind of wasn't out of the bag. But I think everyone knows kind of how you feel at this point. What was it like playing under Paul? We all know as a fan how we feel. How do you feel as a player?
Oh, as a player, unpleasant is the very first word that comes to mind. And I don't want to put that all on his coaching style, because he did come in 08 and in a time before you could just transfer out. The way coaches would open up scholarships to get their guys in is just make life unpleasant, make things bad for the people that are already there. And I had people that said the same story under other coaches at different programs. So it's hard for me to separate what I experienced versus the experience that I've talked with some of the guys from his later classes, 2015, 2016, where it was where the the vibe around the program and the experience the athletes were having had improved substantially.
Okay.
So there were people that I can't say how it happened or how it was once he was fully installed and was not trying to run folks off. But while we were there, man, it was rough. That the first year in '08,
Well, what years were you there for the people that are listening? Were you a player?
So I came in and redshirted under Gailey in '07, and then I was a starting left guard in '08 and '09, and then I graduated in the summer of 2010 and transferred out. So I was there for the first 2 years of the Johnson administration, and like the way, I guess the biggest contrast, the way things were under Gailey, we would practice individual for about half of practice, and then the way he ran 7-on-7, but inside drill and team would be very much we're going to be on for 5 minutes, and then you would go talk in front of the bags for 5 minutes, 1 period on, 1 period off, and that way you're blowing and going for those 5 minutes that you're on. But then those 5 minutes you're off, you get to analyze what you did right. You get to analyze how your technique was wrong on this or that play and move forward. Whereas under Johnson, the way he ran things, you'd go out to practice, you'd have inside drill for about 30, 40 minutes. And then it would be, or I'll say you'd individual for about 30, 40 minutes. And then you'd have inside drill where it is 20 minutes of two huddle offense against the scout team, and it's nonstop. You are going for a full 20 minutes, probably getting close to 20 plus plays in each go. And the way it was set up was we would do this twice a week, every week. And sometimes in '09, I remember the first loss we had was against Miami, and the week we played Miami, we had, I want to say, 3 games in 18 days, and we hit full pads, full contact at every practice in between there. Like we'd have our one Monday practice where you're just running, and we'd have our Thursday practice where you're out there doing a walkthrough, but everything in between, full contact, full go the whole time. It's almost like it's like the Junction Boys, man. It's just
we're going to work now.
Yeah, exactly. It's designed to beat on you, and so it's designed to beat on you and grind you down. And on the one hand, that does produce a disciplined team, but on the other hand, it also produces a team that's beat to shit.
Yeah,
by 5 or 6, everybody's dragging.
I would think, kind of bringing this back to the previous point, something I was going to ask you. Hard to keep weight on your linemen. So when you played, I think you were around 280 at offensive guard. What was the average size of a lineman at that time? Probably 310, something like that.
The average size of just a general college lineman, or average size at Tech?
No, of general. I'm trying to compare the size of a triple option lineman under Paul versus what you'd have at another school that ran a traditional offense at the time. Okay,
so for that, for a traditional offense, an average lineman is going to be anywhere from about 290 up to 315. So your center or your guards, they can be a little lighter, 290, 295, up to 300. And then your tackles are going to be substantial. There's going to be a substantial jump for them. They'll be the ones that are hanging around 305 to 315. Like the 2 tackles that I came in with, they both reported to Tech at right around 300.
Okay.
And yeah. And now the guys that I was playing with largely, I want to say some of the lighter guys were in the low 270s, 275. I don't think anybody played in the 260s, but that could be wrong. Like we had a few guys that flirted with that weight down there, and largest guys were the largest regular starters by '09. I'm trying to think. I guess it may have been. I know Cordero Howard was the only one that really kept weight on. He may have been close to 290, but yeah, the average at Tech was about 20 pounds lighter, 20 to 30 pounds lighter than what you're seeing at other places.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. One more thing I wanted to bring up about the way Paul ran the program under Gailey, and I'm sure I experienced this under other coaches. You knew what you were going to do during the week. It was all meticulously spelled out what was expected and what time you needed to be where on Sundays. On Sundays or at latest Monday mornings, they would get you the schedule out and you would know what you were doing. And I think something that Paul liked was to keep people confused. Like we didn't have a playbook. We didn't have a written schedule that was even posted daily. It was more, hey, you show up at this time and you're going to find out what's happening. And it's hard to live like that because one, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what to prepare yourself for.
Right.
And two, it breeds confusion. I remember there was one day we decided we're shortening pre-practice meeting, and everybody comes out except the A-backs. Like I forget who was coaching them at the time, but didn't get the memo, and they're running out. Everybody else has been on the field for 20 minutes, and the A-backs are just now running into the Rose Bowl from the locker room, and that sort of thing. It keeps you off balance, and it keeps the power concentrated in the guy that's making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it keeps the rest of the staff nervous. It keeps the staff nervous. It keeps the players nervous because you got to be on your job because you never know when that one time, hey, I'm going to change the routine, and and if you miss it or if you're focused in on something else, it can pass you by, and you don't want to deal with the punishment that comes along with that sort of slip.
Wow, so that's interesting. I didn't know that. I don't know what the advantage of just I guess he ran practice kind of like he play called. There wasn't really a rhyme or reason to it. It just was in his head.
And well, when it's all in your head, you're never wrong. I learned that because there was one meeting. We would change the blocking scheme for the triple option play virtually every week based on what the offense or the defense we were going to see that week was doing. And we went over it in pre-practice meeting. Our offensive line coach said, hey, we're going to do this, you're going to do this, and that's how we're going to run it. And we go down for the first play of inside drill, and Paul tears, I can't remember who it was. It might have been me. He tears us a new one. Like, what the hell are you doing? Why, you're going to do this? And I just kind of look over to Coach Seawalk. He's just sitting there quiet. It's like,
and he's the offensive line coach, Seawalk?
And he's oh yeah. Yeah, Seawalk was the offensive line coach. And I look over to him. He's like, yep, that's right, Paul. I'm like, you son of a bitch. You told me the exact opposite thing. But that's how it's handled. When nothing's written down, nothing's out there, then the leader can never be contradicted. Because the leader decides, and
it can't be kind of scrutinized because we don't even know what the hell it is.
Exactly.
What was your impression of his relationship with his staff and coaches?
It was a little bit of a mix. Like, he had his guys that he was good friends with, and they're kind of set. And then he had his guys that he'd known. He had some relationship with, and then he had guys that were, I don't know, maybe they did good in the interview. Maybe they were people he'd known that just weren't on the same level as those first two. And for those guys, if you were his friend, you were fine. And you can look back at the coaching staff, who was on staff in 2008 and who was on staff in 2018, and you can figure it out from there.
Yeah.
But if you weren't one of his good buddies, yeah, he'd throw your ass under the bus real quick. And he had that staff nervous like that. That
Wow.
A-back coach, yeah, I've rarely seen a grown man look like he's about to crap his pants on a football field like that before.
Man.
But he came running out, and yeah, he had his tail tucked between his legs. Oh, I'm so sorry, coach. And it's like, geez, man, I didn't know things were still like this on that level. So yeah, it was a big range based off of who you were, and also his guys that he managed closely were largely the offensive guys. The defensive guys, he had some guys that he liked, but I always got the impression he looked at defensive coaches kind of the way he looked at players. They're just changeable parts.
Yeah, because that came up in the interview, and it was the closest that Bill Shanks came. And I'm not throwing shade at Bill Shanks. I said this in the video. All journalism is access journalism. So if you're critical of Paul, especially a guy like Paul, he's never going to give you another interview again. I get it. The closest he came to a hard question was, you kind of never had a great defense. And Paul kind of shook that off as like, well, my offense is so great. Who cares about defense? And that kind of sounds like what you're echoing, right?
Yep, that's 100% correct. Because the defense was always an afterthought in his practices. And when I think his quote on that time or on that interview, he said something along the lines of, we'll go one-on-ones in camp, but after that, it's they're going against the scout team and they're running whatever offense we're seeing that week.
Right.
And while that is correct, that's a very bait and switch sort of answer, because the way you really sharpen yourself and get ready for the season is that preseason camp. When you are going one-on-one, it's good versus good, and you are sharpening yourself, getting ready for what you're going to face throughout the season. And our defense faced a triple option team. And while they were ready for the option, like, you don't want to run the option against our defense week one. But to say that the scout team is going to prepare a defense the way that you want to be, it's just not there. Because the scout team, you're there to give a picture, and the way scout team offenses ran, they'll have a GA come out with a list with a stack of cue cards, and the cue card just has a play drawn up, and they'll flip through and say, all right, hey, we're running this, go out there and do it.
Yeah.
And so that's a good way to give your defense a picture of what's going to happen. It's not a good way to train up your defense on, this is what a good on good pass rush is going to be like.
Right.
This is what, different situations will be. And so the defense always lagged because of that.
Well, I 100% agree. He kind of did some double speak with that answer. One, he basically said, well, when we hold the ball on offense for 8 or 9 minutes at a time, your defense doesn't have to be that good. And to what you're saying, yes, your scout team's running the other team's offense, but those scout team players were recruited for a triple option system. So you don't have a guy with probably the arm strength you're going to see out of a Division I quarterback or a traditional Division I quarterback. So, hey, yeah, you might be Oski picking a bunch of balls in practice. That same ball is a touchdown against a quarterback that can hum it in there a little bit. And he also double spoke because he kind of said, hey, defense doesn't really matter. But when I was at Georgia Southern, we had a top defense. And it's like, well, which one is it, though? I mean, first of all, Georgia Southern's a totally different deal than they weren't Division I at the time. So it's probably easier to recruit at Georgia Southern. than it is at Georgia Tech. So
it definitely is, and yeah, like the way he would treat. I mean, but just looking at how things ended up for the defensive coordinators he had, he was here 11 years and he had 4 different DCs, I believe. I want to say it started off with Womack, Grow,
who it doesn't seem like he cares for at all. He called Al Grove out in the interview. He's like, well, maybe Al wouldn't agree with that. And it's like, okay, so much for if you don't have anything nice to say, but.
Oh yeah, and well, you want to read a good interview? I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. Coach Womack had some choice words for Johnson whenever he left after, I guess it was after the 09 season. But yeah, he basically put it out there so far as it being a not a fly-by-night organization, but a very by the seat of your pants, unorganized kind of way that he ran the system or way that he ran the program.
Yeah, and just kind of my thought on Paul is it's just a mixed bag. That's kind of what we've been talking about. You're always going to have a well-prepared, disciplined team, and given the offense its due, it's going to allow you to do some things like control the clock. If you get ahead, you got a good shot at winning the game. But you talk about in economics, opportunity costs. So what are you giving up to do this? So what is the opportunity cost associated with us running the triple option for 11 years? I think it's pretty large. And someone actually asked in the chat, and I'll be interested to hear what you have to say, what if Gailey would have not been fired? What would that have looked like at Tech, do you think?
That is a tough question because, one, I felt like Gailey was all about who he surrounded himself with. And it seemed like I don't know what would have happened in 07 or in 08 if we would have kept him around. I know his offensive line coach would have been there, a guy named Joe Delisandris, who was a cerebral coach. He was probably one of the best coaches I've ever been around, because I came in and the way he ran things, his starting offensive linemen knew exactly what they were going to do in every situation. Like they would get quizzed on Thursday pre-practice meeting, and they knew exactly what was going on, exactly how they were going to handle anything the defense would throw at them. So on the one hand, I think we were very well prepared and very well situated to do what we were recruited there to do. Prepare, get the job done, and go pro. I think that that sort of thing would have happened under Gailey. However, like, I don't want to paint it as sunshine and rainbows. Like we would have been winning national titles, because who knows? Like, I know, I think it was Patrick Nix was the OC. Yeah, he was OC the year before I arrived, and
I think he went to Miami after.
He did, because he was at Miami in 08, or when Miami came up in 08, which that was fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time. But
what do I know? I'm ill-informed per the comments.
Yeah. Don't you listen to the commenters, man. No,
it irritates me a little bit. Just you read this stuff, and it really comes from a place of, I love Georgia Tech, and I want it to be the best it can be. And I see people like, 9 wins and 10 wins, but then you bring up, well, what about the recruiting? What about this? What about that? And then it's like, oh no, that's nothing to worry about. And it's like, well, it doesn't seem like you really are committed to what it takes to get to that level.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of, I don't know if Gailey would have been the guy to get us to that level, but I would have loved to have seen how the program would have developed under, say, a Cutcliffe. Like we get if
Yes.
David Cutcliffe comes to Tech instead of going to Duke, and we become, quarterback university. I mean, I don't know if we're winning natties, but I could see a good trajectory
Yeah.
uh, based off of that, and
I think he
really,
interviewed, by the way.
he did. He did. I remember he interviewed. We interviewed the guy at Southern who was running the air raid at the time, and it's hard to say where we would have gone, but I feel like the way things were set up in '08, we had an all-pro offensive tackle. We had a defensive starting 11 littered with Pro Bowlers, not Pro Bowl, Super Bowl champions. Like there was so much talent on those two teams, and we lost talent when Johnson. I mean, I think we
That
talked
tied
about
in.
at tight end, Colin Peak
That
ends up
went to win
being
a natty, I think, right?
yep. Yep, he was highlighted as an impact player on during the national championship game when Alabama was playing. So we had him. We had a physical freak named DJ Donnelly who he blocked a punt in the bowl game. One of the few guys from the '07 or one of the guys from the '07 class that did not redshirt. He was a full-time contributor his freshman year, and he was a wide receiver. And he's like, no, I didn't come to run this offense, and left. So if we had just, I could daydream for years, but whatever coach we would have had in '08 and '09, we would have been successful. There
Yeah.
was too much talent on those teams not to achieve something. And
And we never had that level of talent since.
yep. I mean,
The closest we came under was under Jeff with Gibbs and some kids on that team. I still don't think it is to the level of that '07 class, though.
no, I'll agree with that. And I'm a little biased, and I don't want people to read into it. I was not the highest recruited man in that class, but I did learn what it was like being around top end guys like that. I'd step into I'd do an unofficial visit for a game day, and I'm hanging out with with Nick Clater, 4-star recruit, with John Dwyer, almost 5-star. And when you have that sort of synergy, when you come in and see, oh, these are big time guys that are coming here to accomplish something, it just gives you another sense of confidence. Like, okay, these guys are coming here, we're going to build something. And it's been tough to get back to that.
Yeah, and I guess to end on a lighter note, I do think some things are going right now. I do think Brent. First of all, Brent is a voracious recruiter. He did it at Alabama, and he's talked about, and this is what you didn't get with Paul. The dude enjoys recruiting. The dude, I remember in that same interview, he talked about small ball that Paul didn't like. He said recruiting is a war. Recruiting is a war, like every day of the year. We're bringing in kids like Philo. We've already, we've brought in kids like Haynes King and Zach Pyron, Isaiah Canyon in this last class, a 4-star wide receiver. And what you're seeing with the offense, with Eric Singleton Jr., with Ethan McKinney, who I'm sure you're super thrilled to see a freshman. I don't think people realize how insane that is to have a freshman All-American offensive lineman. Someone was trolling the last show saying, Paul, Key can't develop players. There's no greater indicator of development than having a freshman All-American lineman.
Yep, that's exceptional. Just having a freshman starting on the offensive line is exceptional. Like when Weston Franklin was able to come in and do it, I think he sat behind Monahan for part of a year, and I think he came on midway through his true freshman year. But yeah, having a contributor that young, especially at an offensive line, it's unreal. And being able to recruit, I like what Brent Key said, because Brent Key had, at least from what he has said in public, he has the right mindset, which is, where I'm not here to be mealy mouth and like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want you to pity and pick Tech out of out of some other reason. I want you to come to Tech because, one, you can win here, and two, we live in Atlanta. This is the best city in the nation. Come here, have fun. And under Collins, when he was the recruiter or the recruiting coordinator under Gailey, that was a big thing he focused on. He said, all right, hey, come to Atlanta, and he sent out a map and had, all right, here's the school, here's all the here's all the clubs up on Crescent Avenue that you can go to. Here's what's happening in at the Fox in downtown. Everything's going on, and it made Tech needs to market that, because that is a massive resource.
Yeah, Jeff had all the right ideas with how to market Tech, 1,000%.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like he understands that, and I think there's a lot more stake than just sizzle. Like, I feel like Collins, that's all he was selling. And you can't, that'll get a few guys in the door the first few years, but then you see what's happening and people back off of it. But with Key, if he can continue the sort of success that we've seen in year one, and not continue, expand it. Make it even more, get rid of the Bowling Greens and the Boston College type losses.
Sure.
Get those out of here. And when you can combine a winning program and be able to really market the city, I think the sky could be the limit. And I like him because I think Brent has that mind, or has that headspace, and has that mindset when he's going into attacking it. Whereas, like, just as another comparison to the option, the recruiting hook for the option was always, oh, hey, come here and you can play in the option. So, hey, if you are,
and if you don't like it, go F yourself. That was kind of Paul's mentality.
That was exactly it.
But you've got to have both. So you have the draw of Atlanta, and then you get to say, Ethan McKinney, freshman All-American, you go sit down in a 4-star offensive lineman's house and say, you could be the next one. We're already seeing this with Anthony Carey right now. Anthony Carey, 4-star running back, that says, I want to be the next freshman All-American at Georgia Tech. I want to be a part of the top rush offense in the country. And in that, I want to be a part of bringing Tech back to greatness. When you put both of those things together, because the problem with Jeff is it was all icing and no cake. Mm-hmm. It was all, look at all this cool stuff. Here's Jamie Foxx that's come down here. And all that stuff is great. But no one wants to be a loser. And that's what Jeff was, as plainly as I can say it. No one wants to miss bowls. No one wants to go 3-9 or 3-7. And I think he can do that. Another thing that I don't know if you caught this, he was saying, Brent has all these things I didn't have. And to me, it wasn't in the vein of great. Yes, finally someone's getting this buy-in. It was kind of sour grapes. Like, this is all the stuff I didn't get, which I understand that. But again, I said it in the video. I think it was a great shot to really put Brent over with someone who's already ingratiated with Tech, and he didn't do that. That was my disappointment with what he said about Brent.
Yeah, well, it's because there's only one room for one at the top of the mountain. And with Paul Johnson, that's always going to be Paul Johnson. Because granted, the administration could have done a few things differently, I'm sure, when he was here, but for as much as he complained about things, that the edge center, the locker rooms, the weight room, the stadium, all of that was remodeled during his tenure. Like, they remodeled, or not remodeled, I'll give it a facelift or whatever you call it, to the stadium shortly afterwards. And the locker room changed a whole bunch, and the there was investment there.
Right. So he's
From
acting
the
like they
administration.
just gave him the middle finger and said, "We're not doing anything. Here's $2. Go figure it out."
Yeah, exactly. They built an indoor facility. Like that was something that we did not have, or that we desperately needed. And yeah, they found. I want to say that was built. Was that built in his last year, or maybe it was built or it was under construction last year? But
Yeah.
like, yeah, the administration could have done more, but I think he oversells it a little bit. Like, oh, I was just out here with a tin can and a string calling recruits.
Yeah. I
That's
had my
very
little
funny.
can out and I jingled
Yeah.
the change around. And I'm looking through the comments. Did Bill Shanks, did that show mention my video? That's kind of the impression I'm getting from the comments. I guess it was on Monday's show. I'll have to go check it out. But we'll kind of end on this. And I'll ask it generally like this. As someone who's played at Tech, as someone who's been to an ACC title game, someone who's kind of seen the heights of the conference, what do you think Tech can do to get back to where it needs to be? And then also I want to hear about the party after the ACC title game.
To get back to the top, well, one, I think the first thing I think has already been done, and that is to bring in discipline and have a team that is disciplined and doing the small things right. Mm-hmm. That was always my biggest red flag. I know you was talking about red flags the other day. My biggest red flag with Collins was the team did not look organized. You'd have 12 men on the field for a field goal or some other silly shit. And that's the sort of thing, that is the mark of a bad program more than anything. Yeah. If you are not organized, if you're not, if you don't have punt team on with the right personnel, if you can't do those things, you haven't even, you're not even stepping up to the plate. You've got nothing.
Who coached those special teams you're talking about, by the way?
Wait, last year?
Not last year. Oh, you're talking about under Key. I was saying under Collins. Yeah. Collins was the special teams coach.
Oh, under Collins. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he should have hired somebody better for that.
That's almost Paul like I'm the only one who can do this correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but go ahead. You're bringing Tech back to greatness.
But so the first thing has already been done. Now the second thing, once you have a disciplined and organized team, you got to win the games that you're supposed to win, and we did that by and large last year. But when I say that, that's not beating the Bowling Greens and the VMIs of the world. That's beating the Boston Colleges, the Syracuses, the Wake Forests.
Well, we kind of did the opposite. We beat teams we weren't supposed to beat, and then we lost the teams we were not supposed to lose to.
Yeah, and while that's rough, that's a year one thing. That's something that I can say, okay, year one, and you can kind of see how things went, or see the correction that's happening just based on the staff. We have an entirely new defensive staff.
Yes.
From last year. And I think, this is just my 2 cents. I think those changes were made because he, evaluated the guys he had, and he thought, okay, well, we need everybody to be on the same page, and maybe some of them weren't. And so I'm expecting this year win the games you're supposed to win, and be competitive in the games that are close. And that doesn't mean that we're going to have close losses all the time. I want to win some of those games, like your Louisvilles, your Florida States. Like Florida State is something I've got really circled this next year, because one, we have the deck is stacked in our favor. We know what we're doing on offense.
Yes.
We know our personnel. We know what we have. We know what we did last year. We know what we're going to do in Ireland. Whereas Florida State, they have a barrel of talent. Like they've
Yep.
got they hit the portal and got a lot of athletic guys, but that that fall is going to be that game is going to be the first time they step out on the field against the opponent as Florida State. And even though Norvell's a good coach, I'm expecting that to be a win purely because we know how good we are, and if we make the step up that I'm expecting us to, we can go out and beat an athletic team that doesn't that isn't quite fitted yet. Like it's
Right.
Florida State, yeah. I don't think they're going. I mean, they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be hitting their stride until maybe game 4, game 5.
Well, they're
Once
coming
all
off
those,
of a hangover from this whole debacle that happened last postseason. So that could play into it. Outside of tech circles, if we're honest with ourselves, no one's thinking a ton about tech. People are probably saying, "Oh, well, they're kind of back to mediocre." And this is just me, like talking from an outsider's perspective. That could give you a little edge there of like I talked about this in the last live show. I want Tech to be a tough out. Like, hey, we might be more talented than them, but that it don't really matter. I mean, and to Paul's credit, that was really what you got under Paul. Like, you couldn't overlook a Paul Johnson coach team for sure.
and that's what we need to be this year. We need to be a team that you cannot overlook and a team that will take care of business. And then next year in year 3, that is when I'm really expecting a next step to be taken. Because one, we'll have all the recruits that are coming in right now, all the transfers that they can get in. In year 3, I'm expecting to to perform on a big stage, and by that I mean like what happened last year at North Carolina. Prime time, whole country's
Great.
watching it. Yeah, it's a nighttime, and we come out and we win. We win in an exciting fashion.
Yeah.
And I feel like if Tech can get a few of those performances in year 3, then I feel like we're off to the races. Like I think that's what puts us back in to the top tier of the conference. Talking about potentially getting into the playoffs, talking about an ACC title.
What do you think about the calculus requirement? Someone's asking. I mean, to my knowledge, every major requires it. Do you think there should be a change academically at Tech?
And I know I'm a little out of step with some of the fan base on this. I don't. I think the academic wing of the Edge Center is very good. Like they have, especially for calculus and pre-calc, I think was what you can still get away with. Learning that they had tutors that would come in and tutor us one-on-one. They'd have class sessions, and the way things are, like, you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a Poindexter to, if you are, it'll be a lot easier for you. But I feel like that is a part of the process at Tech is you have to apply yourself to this class. You have to work at it and apply yourself to get past it. You're not just there to play football. So for that reason, I think we should keep it. I wouldn't mind maybe expanding a little bit in the HTS department if we wanted to, because that's the thing. I don't think everybody that comes to Tech needs to be a business major or a
engineer, basically.
or an engineer. Yeah. There are other options, and I think we should market that a little more and maybe expand those majors. But so far as doing away with some of the requirements, I think once you get a guy in the program, in the locker room, in study hall, if they're not the type of guy that can apply themselves and find a way to pass this class, then if they're not willing to apply themselves there, I don't think that they are Tech material. And that might be a little harsh.
No,
but
it makes sense.
I think that's it.
I think we disagree on that, and that's fine. I get it's part of what makes Tech special, and I'm not saying I disagree with that, and that's part of the process. My thing is, I guess selfishly as a fan, I know it's going to be an impediment to recruiting because I know there's going to be kids that just say, I just don't want to fool with that.
Yeah, and I get that. I think that's a valid concern and a valid because there are definitely people that get scared off by it. But I feel like the culture at Tech, the tradition that we have there, I don't want to sacrifice too much of that academically in order to get in, a lower quality. No, I don't want to say a lower quality athlete, but an athlete who's not willing to apply themselves in the classroom or not willing to work at it.
No, I totally get that. And that can be a recruiting draw for certain kids. Look, you can go, I'm not even going to pick at the school north of us. Let's pick on Auburn because they actually had an instance where academically they wanted to get rid of a program and the football coaches and athletic department came in and said, no, all our athletes are in that. Now you can go major in that, and if football doesn't work out, be absolutely screwed in your career. And the thing with Tech is there's not a major that you can't have a fantastic career in. There's not a major that you can't be fairly wealthy in. And look, most people, even kids that are 4 and 5 star kids, all of them don't work out. And then what are you going to do? And to your point, that is what I like at Tech of like, hey, you don't have to worry here.
Yep. Wholeheartedly agree with that. No, I think that's one of the things about Tech that I really want to preserve is that the academic standard is set to a place where you're going to have to apply yourself, but once you get through it, you know how to work after you've finished. After you finished at Tech, you're not going to show up on your first day doing whatever you're doing after college, and get worried by the workload because you already know what you need to do. You have developed the skills you need to get done whatever you're going into professionally.
Yeah, and just as a little cheat sheet, if you're having to take calculus this semester, you've never taken it, learn the chain rule first. It'll help you for a few weeks. You get a little cheat there. Last thing, what was the party after the 09 ACC title like? What did you do after you won?
Man, I'm trying to remember what we did after that. Cause
sounds like a good time already.
Well, funnest thing was passing the trophy around in the locker room. That was a blast because you take your time and everybody's getting pictures and just being out on the field. I remember they assembled the stage and they allowed a few guys to walk up, and I just happened to be right there by the stairs. So I walked myself right up, stood right next to the trophy as they were handing it out. And man, it was the feeling on the field and in the locker room was an absolute blast. So far as parties directly afterwards, we flew back and got in. I want to say it was around 1 a.m. by the time we got back to Tech, and sadly by then, I wish I could tell you that we were greeted by throngs of fans when we pulled up to Bobby Dodd, and the whole city turned out for us, but no, by that time it was 1 a.m. and I think everybody had already gone home for Christmas break by then. So I think I just went back to the dorm and had a few beers with my buddies and fell asleep.
Nice. Well, sounds good. Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much, taking us behind the scenes a little bit, and Paul Johnson, your time at Tech and what we can kind of expect in the future. So appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on, man. And I love what you're doing here. Love the channel. Go Jackets.
I appreciate it. Well, guys, thank you all for showing up, showing out. We'll see you in the next one.